Hello again, everybody. Good evening. I'm Catrin, and you're tuned in to KISS, Keto It's Simple for Success. This is Amelia, everybody.
Hi.
She's my assistant for this evening because Daddy's in work. So tonight we're actually going to be talking about the health benefits of a keto lifestyle and the KISS plan. So I hope that you have plenty of questions for me because I know that health is something that we're all really keen to achieve. But also when we're talking about keto and you hear that we're talking about increasing the amounts of dietary fat and excluding some of the things that you would assume were perfectly healthy and normal to eat, like fruit, perhaps you've got some questions as to how healthy the ketogenic lifestyle is, particularly long term. So please do give me your questions. I will happily answer them. This is obviously going out live in the group, so if you're here, welcome. I will be uploading this video to YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube right now, then please subscribe to the channel. I would absolutely love it, and drop your comments below, and hopefully that I will be able to bring you some more videos in future. Okie dokie. So I thought what I'd do first is talk about one of the main health issues that the Western world is facing at the moment, and how a ketogenic lifestyle can help with that issue. So this issue is metabolic syndrome. Now, you will know of some of the issues that I'm talking about. Metabolic syndrome covers the whole area of obesity, type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, and things like that, and cardiovascular health. These are all sort of metabolic issues. 2 seconds. Thank you. So loud I could hear it out of my earphones. Okay, so a metabolic syndrome then. Now, how do you know if you're suffering with a metabolic syndrome? Well, firstly, you may know that you're overweight or obese. The second thing is waist measurement. Now, this is one of the key things that you can actually track during your ketogenic journey to see how you're doing in terms of health improvement. Now, one of the major risk factors in cardiovascular health, in type 2 diabetes, and for strokes, for cancer, and for heart attack is actually waist measurement. Now, an increased waist measurement is an indication that you're storing something called visceral fat. So it's not just fat under the skin, but you're actually storing fat around your major organs within the abdominal cavity. So metabolic syndrome and this abdominal fat, and especially fat within the liver, fat within the pancreas, fat around the major arteries, can obviously have significant health implications. So metabolic syndrome, your type 2 diabetes, your obesity, things like this are an absolute plague in modern society. We now have a generation who are born probably looking to have a lower life expectancy than their parents. And this is for the first time ever that this has happened. We're actually going backwards in terms of health. So how can a ketogenic lifestyle improve this metabolic disorder? Well, metabolic disorder is caused absolutely by insulin. It is the hormone that stores the fat around our organs. It stores fat in our liver. It stores fat in our pancreas, and it stores fat all around our arteries and our heart and our lungs and everywhere else. But it also stores fat subcutaneously, which means under our skin. So that's the fat that you'll see around your face, around your arms, your legs, your buttocks and things like that. So you've got subcutaneous fat and this visceral abdominal fat as well, which is even more sinister in fact. So it's insulin that is storing that fat there. Now, to reduce insulin, what we need to do is to stop putting carbohydrates in the body. That it's as simple as that, really. So a ketogenic lifestyle where we do stop and restrict the carbohydrates that are going into our body greatly reduces the amount of insulin that our body's making and greatly reduces the amount of fat that the body is storing. So in terms of obesity, weight issues, having control over insulin has massive, massive impact on that. Insulin is also responsible for insulin resistance. So if you can imagine, our cells are used to, they have insulin there as a driver so that they can take up sugar into the cell and to use as energy. Now, as there's more and more sugar coming into our diet, as we're eating more and more sugary foods, as we're constantly eating carbohydrate, as we're being told to eat 5 small meals a day, whole grains, fruit, you name it, we're eating carbohydrates all day, every day. So the insulin that we're producing is increasing, and in order to actually match the amount of sugar that we're eating, the insulin is having to gradually increase as well. Now, there comes a point where the cells become what's called insulin resistant, and that allows the blood sugar to actually start creeping above the amount of insulin that we are producing. Now, what does the body do? Well, it actually just boosts more insulin, it sends more insulin out, and what happens is the insulin is storing fat. So the more carbohydrate that we're eating, the more insulin we're producing, the more insulin resistant our cells are becoming, meaning we need to produce more and more insulin, and so more and more fat is being stored in the body. So insulin resistance is all about too much insulin, and the way that we reverse that, and it can take time, don't get me wrong, is to reduce the amount of insulin that our body is producing. And we do that simply by restricting carbohydrates in the body. So that's, you know, a big deal in terms of metabolic syndrome. Type 2 diabetes is the extreme end of insulin resistance, when we literally, our pancreas cannot produce the amount of insulin required to deal with the amount of sugar that we are eating, and that's type 2 diabetes. So you get abnormally high blood sugars and abnormally high levels of insulin as well. And again, as I showed in my own case, when I dropped insulin and when I dropped sugar from the diet, type 2 diabetes went away. I was lucky that I caught my diabetes quite early. I know other people, it takes slightly longer. However, the ketogenic diet may be the ultimate cure for metabolic disease and diabetes type 2. So 2 potentially massive health benefits of the ketogenic lifestyle. The other thing I wanted to say was about heart health and cardiovascular health. Now, this is a biggie because people talk to me a lot about cholesterol and the amount of fat that's in the ketogenic diet. Well, firstly, there's a couple of things that you need to know. The first one is cholesterol is not necessarily a bad thing at all. And in fact, we can't live without cholesterol. Cholesterol is very, very important. Cholesterol is actually what moves fat around our body. So if we're looking to release fat from our cells and we don't have high levels of cholesterol, then it's very difficult for this fat to actually move around the body. So not all cholesterol is bad, and we do actually need a healthy level of cholesterol in order to make this diet work and to make any lifestyle work. In fact, you need something called HDL cholesterol, and you also need some of the LDL cholesterol as well, because that picks up blood fats and moves them around as well. So very, very important that those things exist. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that we know that the body produces cholesterol. Cholesterol is not something that's broken down from our food and then floats around. Our body makes it, and it actually makes it in response to things like inflammation. So it's not necessarily anything to do with diet that's impacting our levels of cholesterol. You can have genetically high cholesterol, for example. So that's the second thing to understand, is that it's our body that's actually making cholesterol. And often it will make cholesterol because there's not enough fat in the diet. So that's another thing to remember as well. We can actually lower bad cholesterol from putting good fats in the diet. So that's another thing. The next thing to know about cholesterol is, like I said, there's a very good cholesterol, which is HDL cholesterol, and high levels of HDL cholesterol are associated with low risk of heart disease. Then you've got something called LDL. Now, lots of people think LDL cholesterol, think LDL cholesterol is bad. Now, what we need to know is there's more than one type of LDL cholesterol. Firstly, there's big fluffy particle LDL, and they are very much the sort of lorry, the trucks of our blood, and they shuttle lots and lots of fat molecules around, take them to the cells that need them and things like that. So they're really, really good. They're normal. And then you've got small particle LDL. Now, these are the particles that don't have any fat attached to them. And these are the particles that are small enough to get stuck and to form plaques within arteries. Now, you'll notice I said that they're the particles that don't have any fat attached to them. Now, that's an indication as to how we can actually improve this. Giving our body natural fats is a way to turn our small LDL particles into large fluffy ones. So there's definitely something to be learnt around there. The last thing that we need to know, and if you ever have cholesterols and your blood work done, is to understand something called triglycerides. And this is the total number of fat molecules in your blood. So how fatty is your blood? Now, again, triglycerides are quite interesting in that when you eat more healthy fat, the levels of sort of spare triglyceride fat in the blood actually reduces. And this is really, really interesting. And it's a slightly complicated mechanism, but what you need to know is because the fat is being released from the cells and it's being burned, it's not floating around, basically. So you're actually using your blood fats that are released from the cells and that are digested from your food instead of allowing them to float around until insulin comes along and stores them in a cell. So triglycerides usually, and this is usually the case, reduce on a ketogenic diet as well. So all in all, if you're following a whole foods ketogenic diet and you're eating healthy fats, and I'm not talking about trans fats or highly processed or high heat processed fats, I'm talking about things like your omega-3, so your oily fish, your nuts, your seeds, your butter, and yes, butter is a healthy fat, your coconut oil, your olive oil, and things like this. These are the sorts of fats that will actually improve your ratios of good and bad cholesterol and lower triglycerides as well. So very, very important that you understand that cholesterol is not necessarily bad. There's a genetic definitely a genetic aspect to our cholesterol levels, and we actually need cholesterol to move fat around the body effectively. So yes, you will definitely have cholesterol there. However, it's more complicated than that, and often the doctor would need to do a more complicated blood test to actually separate those big fluffy particle LDLs and the small particle LDLs to actually tell you if there's a concern or not. So definitely something to look into if you're interested in that. Okie dokie, I'm going to move on, but if you do have any questions regarding heart health and why actually increasing healthy fats is really, really good for your heart, then do put the questions there and I'll try and get you as much information as I possibly can. Believe me, it's something I was really interested in myself, because what I don't want to do is help people by actually making them unhealthy. So the next thing is cognitive function. So we're talking about the brain. Another thing that is becoming more and more of an issue, especially in the UK and the Western world, is the aging brain. Now, our brain is actually designed to work well all the way to the end of our life. However, what we're noticing in greater and greater numbers is that brains are malfunctioning later on in life. We've got things like an increase in Alzheimer's, dementia, and sort of the degenerative neurological conditions of the aging brain. And what we're also noticing is these conditions are being seen in younger and younger people. So there's obviously an issue there. And what we are finding now in terms of the literature is that our brain is, first of all, it's made of fat, But secondly, it's one of the biggest and most prolific users of energy in our body. The brain actually takes up 60% of our calorific intake. So the metabolism and what we feed ourselves has a huge impact in our brain. What we're noticing now is, and what is actually being termed as Alzheimer's, being termed as diabetes type 3. So these degenerative changes in the brain linked to high levels of insulin, high levels of sugar, are actually affecting now cognitive function and the way our brain ages. So what keto can do is twofold. Firstly, if you start the ketogenic diet early in life, then potentially it can help prevent these things happening at all. But the second thing is, if you have any cognitive impairment, keto can do two things. Firstly, ketones are a really efficient fuel source, and the brain loves to run on ketones. Now, a damaged brain is less able to use sugar and carbohydrates. So ketones are a really vital source of fuel. So what they've noticed is when they increase the level of ketones in the blood of a person who's suffering from a degenerative neurological condition, they actually start to see improvements in cognitive ability. Now, that's really, really interesting. Secondly, there is a longer term effect as well. What we've been able to discover is that when you have high level of ketones long term, it can actually change the gene expression within our cells. So it can change the way the cell reproduces itself, and it can actually reproduce itself better, and it can actually reproduce the little tiny bits of the cell that are called a mitochondria, which is the fuel part of the cell and the energy store, the battery in the cell, can actually start to produce more mitochondria in the next cell that it produces. And this is really, really interesting, because it's those mitochondria, or lack of mitochondria, that are starving those cells of energy and causing cells to die in the brain. So this is really, 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 it's cutting edge, it's brand new. However, more and more people are showing interest now in the potential impact of ketones and being in a state of ketosis for the brain. So definitely something to watch. And if anyone's concerned at all about being able to focus, concentrate, work long hours, the brain runs really, really well on ketones. So definitely something to watch there in the future, because everything's so brand new at the moment. Okay. Keto, it makes you thirsty. I've noticed already. Okay, so we'll move on from the brain then to hormone regulation. Now, there's lots of women in the group, there's lots of men in the group, and we all run on hormones. Sometimes I think I'm running completely on hormones, but ultimately there's lots of hormones in the body, and it's hormones that really keep our body in a state of health. They monitor things in the body, they tell our cells to do different things, and it's really, really important that we keep our hormones in balance. And a lot of the health issues that people are talking to me about in the group are hormone related, whether it be fertility issues, whether it be mental health, whether it be but just lots of things. PCOS I'm hearing about. I'm hearing about men who have issues with their prostate, men who have issues with erectile dysfunction, all sorts of things. And it's all to do with hormones regulating in the body. So really, really, really important that we keep our hormones in check. Now, the glands of the body are dependent really on energy, and like we've discussed, ketones is a really, really efficient source of energy. So one of the ways that ketones can help is actually feeding our glands better. So in terms of our all the glands that are producing hormones in the body, they obviously run better because they're getting that more efficient fuel source. So that's the first thing. Secondly, our weight has a huge impact on our hormones. So in terms of our fertility, the body has a sweet spot where it's of a healthy weight for reproduction, and that has a huge impact on our fertility and things like that. You'll also get a lot of hormones being stored in the fat cells, and of course what ketosis does is releases not just the fat from the fat cells, but all the other junk that was stored in there as well. So all those hormones can be released. So you get people having, first of all, that sort of high hormone effect, and maybe even a return to menstrual cycle if they've stopped, and then you get a regulatory effect on hormones, which is obviously what we're aiming for. We don't want to be crazy people all the time. So it does regulate hormones, so it's really, really important. And some of the issues like polycystic ovarian syndrome and things like that are linked really, really strongly to issues of insulin resistance. So a lot of the women in the group who are having issues in terms of fertility or hormones, this isn't just about the sex hormones, this is also about insulin. And once we get that insulin under control, then a lot of these issues that are linked to this insulin resistance improve as well. So you do see great things happening in terms of hormones as well. Okie dokie. So moving on from hormones. For the guys as well, so I don't want to leave you out, but ketosis is fantastic for increasing normal levels of testosterone in the body. Testosterone is really important for men and women, because women have testosterone as well. But testosterone is really good for protecting lean mass, for giving you energy, for increasing libido, and for generally giving you those masculine features, and for preventing things like that sort of guy, the sort of female shapes, the moves, the man boobs and things like that. So it's really, really important that we have this regulation. It's not just about women. Testosterone is really important, guys. It keeps them really healthy, and is really important as testosterone starts to decrease as you age. So maintaining testosterone levels, maintaining bone mass, maintaining lean mass is really, really important. So the longer that you can keep those normal levels of testosterone going, the better health that you're going to enjoy. So ketosis and weight loss in general, fantastic for maintaining testosterone as well. Okie dokie. So I'll move on then to a really, really interesting potential health benefit of the keto lifestyle. And this is in terms of what it does to inflammation in the body. Now, a lot of the foods that we actually avoid when we eat keto are inflammatory. For example, grain, sugar in general, fructose, so in fruit, high levels of fiber, which can be inflammatory as well. Some of the legumes like peanuts and cashews can be as well. And we can also, if we want to, remove dairy if that's proving to be inflammatory for someone. So I think sugar and grain is the big thing. And I think that a lot of people in the group have told me that their inflammation has reduced during the period of the trial and during the last 2 months that they've been sort of following how I eat. Things like, for example, sciatica pain, arthritis, skin conditions. It certainly helped with my skin a lot, giving up grain particularly. It does seem that I am absolutely intolerant to wheat, and it's only got worse over the years, but removing it has had fantastic effects. But inflammation is part of a lot of autoimmune diseases and a lot of things like allergies and things like that. So removing some inflammation from the body, helping the microbiome of the gut, can have huge implications for things like chronic pain. And I do hear of people saying, I feel like I move, I haven't got the pain anymore, it's gone away. So that's a really big thing. And inflammation is just not nice, and it's nice to actually not be swollen. And not to be hanging with water all the time because you're so inflamed and bloated and things like that. So definitely, if you've got autoimmune disorders, if you've got allergies, intolerances, then this can be really, really effective at bringing all the inflammation down in the body. And like I said, bad cholesterol is made from an inflammatory response. So really interesting there that removing that inflammation can really help to address some of the inflammation in the body. Things like asthma, try and get my husband onto it. But yeah, things like asthma and things like that can be really improved. Okay, and COPD as well. Okie dokie. Last but not least, there is fantastic research being done at the moment of the potential of a ketogenic diet in terms of cancer treatment. Now, this is really, really exciting, obviously, because cancer is one of those things that we are desperately looking to understand, to be able to prevent and to be able to cure. Now, what we do know about cancer cells, not all of them, but the majority of them, is they are hugely reliant on glucose for energy. Now, they have 10 times more insulin receptors, so things on the cell that actually wait to pick up insulin than normal cells. They are very, very insulin sensitive and will take up glucose before the surrounding cells around it. So we'll starve the cells around it as well of glucose. Now, they have shown fantastic initial studies of actually shrinking and killing tumours by starving them of glucose. And of course, they do that by restricting carbohydrate in the diet. But of course, the normal cells are really, really good at using ketones. So the normal cells are protected because they're using ketones for fuel, but the cancer cells are glucose reliant. So you remove the glucose, lo and behold, those cells die off, and the normal healthy cells thrive. So massive, massive potential there for using ketosis as a potential way to naturally reduce cancer. And I know for me, my general improvement in health, my loss of the weight and everything else, it's all gone to contribute to lowering my risk of so many diseases and syndromes and things like that. So all we can do is our best. We're all going to die of something. However, I'm determined I am not going to die because I ate sugar. You know, you need to come at me with something better than that, because I'm completely in control of what I eat. We're all in control of what we eat. So we can choose our health, and I really hope that if you've got health conditions that you're looking for an answer, that potentially that answer could be on your plate, because ultimately we are what we eat. We absolutely are. Our cells are regenerating constantly, and they need to pick up fuel and proteins and bits and pieces to put those new cells together. And it's up to us what we build those new cells with. Do we want to fill them with stored body fat and high levels of sugar and have high levels of insulin and visceral fat and all the rest? Or do we want to do what we can, which is to address what we're eating and actually build our cells with fantastic protein sources, healthy fats, loads and loads of vitamins and minerals from our green veg, and go from there? You know, it's completely up to us. So I'm going to open up the floor because I know there are a couple of people watching. If you've got any questions about the potential health benefits of KISS or keto eating in general, I would love to answer them. But if not, then I really hope that you got something out of this video. And I hope that when you're thinking about your health, that you do consider that potentially you could have some control over the severity of your issue, and potentially if it is a metabolic syndrome and it is all down to what you eat, then potentially the key to health is in your hands. And I hope you join us in the KISS group to start your journey with us. Anyway, I'm going to leave you now because it's getting late. And I've just talked for half an hour straight about the health benefits of keto. There's loads of fantastic sound bites in the group. Better sleep, better energy, control over cravings, loss of, no pain, people who are improving things like polycystic ovarian syndrome, people who had heart palpitations and they've gone, reflux, acid reflux gone, loads and loads of things. And this is just by eating proper, normal, healthy food. So we would absolutely love for you to join us and start your journey as well. Like I said, if you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe. That would be great. But if you're watching live in the group, you've been fantastic. Thank you so much for being my audience, and I will see you all soon. Bye from me and bye from Amelia. Bye.